السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. رب يسر ولا تؤسر وتممه لنا بالخير يا فتاه يا فتاه يا فتاه. قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في القرآن المجيد والفرقان الحميد بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم. Brothers and sisters, we are grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this bounty and blessing that He has gathered us here today. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also gather us beneath His arsh and His throne and His shade when there will be no shade except for the shade of the arsh of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fill our lives with mercy and rahmah as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed so many favors upon all of us. Jazakallah khairan for such a beautiful introduction. I'm not worthy of it. I remember saying this before, but this is a reminder for myself, just on a lighter note. They say there was a person who owned a horse, and it was worthless for him. Cost him too much, didn't produce enough benefit for the owner. So he went to a very loyal and good friend of his. So he said, can you sell this horse for me? It's not any of use for me. So he said, of course, that's easy for me. So he took this horse in the middle of the street and he made a public announcement. He said, I have this horse with me, which is so beautiful, that runs so quickly, it runs derbies, takes the least, earns the most. He's speaking about such great things about the horse. So after a few minutes, the owner of the horse taps his friend's shoulder and says, brother, I changed my mind. I'm not going to sell my horse. He said, why aren't you going to sell your horse? You just asked me to sell the horse. He says, I never knew my horse was so good. So, subhanAllah, may Allah reward you for all the good. They say when people are good, they look at the good of others. And may Allah forgive, when the hearts become corrupted, then the greatest of the deeds of individuals will become silent in our eyes. And this is something that we as an ummah need to create, to look towards the khair of others, to turn our eyes away from the wrongs of others. Never look for the faults of others. Look for the khair of others. That will create the ijtimaiyat, the collectiveness, and the strength of the ummah. Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu, I have a topic to talk about. I guess we have many sessions to talk about, but I want to share with you a quick story. Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu, while he was patrolling the streets of Medina, he came across a house where he noticed something which was not, normal. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud or Abdullah ibn Abbas, either one of them was with Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu. So when he noticed something which was not normal, Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu jumped from the wall of the house and he came inside. And to his amazement, and subhanAllah, Umar radiallahu anhu is a man of firasa. He's a man of foresight. He's a man who sees from the nur of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestows upon His chosen slaves. So now when he jumps inside, he finds an old man who is engaged in drinking alcohol. And with that, he finds a woman who is engaged in singing and dancing. And he sees this old man. He says, you're so close to your death, and I see you involved in such heinous acts. He says, Umar, I might be doing one wrong within the limitations of my own house, but you just made 3 mistakes. You just made 3 mistakes from the verses of the Quran. First and foremost, you jumped in my house from the wall and you never entered through the door. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the verse of the Quran that when you enter the buyut, the houses, you must enter from the doors. Number 2, you were looking for my faults, meaning spying upon me, which the Quran says, do not do tajassus, do not go and find and seek the wrongs of others. And number 3, Umar, you never seek my permission in entering my house. I did 1 sin. In the close proximity of my own house, you committed 3 mistakes, Umar. It is said that Amirul Mu'mineen, a man of authority, he could have done whatever he wanted and taken him outside and made it public. It is mentioned that Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu took the piece of cloth that he had and he stuck it between his teeth So his crying is not visible to the Sahabi who's standing outside. Because if he would go outside crying, then the Sahabi would say, Umar, why are you crying? You went to see something, and now you came back outside, and why are you crying? He said he stuck the cloth in his mouth, so his noise of weeping cannot be heard to others. And he went inside, and he left the house, without saying anything to this old man. He says, many weeks passed. This old individual, this old man, never showed up to the majlis of Umar radiallahu anhu. Because he knew that if he would, then Umar radiallahu anhu would remember it wouldn't be a good thing. So weeks passed, and this old man never showed up. Finally, many days had passed that this individual showed up. And he sat all the way in the back of the gathering of Umar radiallahu anhu. And Umar radiallahu anhu, being a man, and subhanAllah, an entire series can be done on Umar radiallahu anhu, his life itself, he was a man which looked at everything at once with wisdom and foresight. So he saw this old man. So he called him further. So the guy said, you know what, I'm done. I came after so many days, maybe he forgot, he's not going to do anything. I'm done. Umar radiallahu anhu is calling me so close to him. He called him so close. He says, come close. And he came so close to Umar radiallahu anhu and said, you know what, no, bring your ear closer to me. When this individual brought his ear closer to Umar radiallahu anhu, he whispered in his ear and he said, I never told anyone that I saw you drinking that night. I never told them. Even the guy standing outside, I never even told him. Abdullah radiallahu anhu doesn't even know. No one was informed. I never told him. So this man said, Umar, can you bring your ear closer? I said, yeah. He says, from that night, I also never touched alcohol in my life. I also left it. Meaning this was the mizaj of Sahaba. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward the brothers for introducing in such a manner. May Allah allow us to look at the khair of each other. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to turn away our eyes from the evils of others. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to change our lives towards goodness. Brothers and sisters, this is a gathering, a majlis, which I have been a part of a few times. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I consider this as a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for me to be a part of this gathering. Maybe the second or the third time, I'm not really sure. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward the brothers and sisters who have been so engaged in making this happen. These things don't happen like this. There's a lot of work, there's a lot of dua, there's a lot of struggle, there's a lot of effort that goes behind it, conducting such programs. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you from His own treasures. For those that we know of, and those that we may not even know the names of, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you greatly in this world, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this as a means of your elevation in this world with izzat, respect, and dignity. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this as a means of your salvation on the day of Qiyamah as well. Brothers and sisters, the session that I have been given for this time, inshallah, in the companionship of such great scholars who are present along here, this topic itself, we are going to cover the topic called the letter of Malcolm X at the time of his Hajj. Related to this letter, what is this letter and who is Malcolm X? I'm not going to just tell you the story itself, but I want to read to you something very, very important. I know reading can be really boring, but I want your utmost attention in listening to what I'm going to read to you. So I'm going to read to you two things. First and foremost, I'm going to tell you who Malcolm X is. Because if I tell you the letter of Malcolm X, which he wrote in April in 1964, when he was in Makkah, and he sent it back in Harlem to his friends, it's not going to make any sense if I don't know who he is. And if I don't know the letter itself of what he actually wrote from his own words, for me to explain will not be of any benefit. So for the next few minutes, I'm going to be engaged in reading. Forgive me, I'm going to be using my phones. I know many of the kids are here, you're not using your phones, that's great. That's amazing. But I would want all of us to be focused upon what I'm about to share with you in the text. So number one, I'm going to read to you a little bit about this man called Malcolm X. Who is he? Why is his last name X? Have you ever thought of that? Why was his last name X? What was his name after Islam? Just some brief story. It's not a topic, but just to understand racial equality, justice in Islam, you need to know this man. And secondly, I'm going to read to you the letter that he actually wrote, so let's go towards it. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So number one, who is Malcolm X? Sorry, I don't have it memorized, so I'm just going to read this. Malcolm X. His original name, which he was known was, his name was Malcolm Little. And as we know, that the time that he was born, there was so much civil, injustices within America itself that people of darker skins and complexions were completely known as, or taken as slaves. So his slave name, or things that were known by the master's name, he was known as Malcolm Little. Muslim name of his, which he himself called Al-Hajj Malik al-Shaybaz. This is his name that he's known as. He was born on May 19th, 1925 in Omaha, Nebraska. A U.S., a person, he passed away, he died in New York itself, in Harlem, which I'll talk about near the end, on February 21st, 1965 in New York. African-American leader, I'm just going to quickly read this. African-American leader, prominent figure in the Nation of Islam, who articulated the concept of race, pride, and black nationalism in the early 1960s. Of course, after his assassination that occurred, that I'll talk about as well, a widespread autobiography of Malcolm X was spread, which was written in 1965 itself. Early years of Malcolm X himself and his conversion. Born in Nebraska while an infant, Malcolm moved with his family to Lansing, Michigan. When Malcolm was 6 years old, his father, who was a reverend at the time, which is also a priest who teaches, his name was Earl Little, a Baptist minister and former supporter of the early black nationalist leaders, died after being hit by a streetcar. Many say that he was killed, quite possibly the victim of a murder for the people of those times, because he would speak so openly about the blacks at that particular time. The surviving family was so poor that Malcolm X's mother, Louise Little, resorted to cooking on the street and feeding her children. After she was committed to an insane asylum in 1939, Malcolm and his family and siblings were sent to foster homes to live with another family. Malcolm excelled in school, but after one of his 8th grade teachers told him that he should become a carpenter instead of a lawyer, he lost interest and soon ended his formal education. As a rebellious youngster, Malcolm X moved from Michigan State to the detention home, a juvenile home in Mason, Michigan. So many things continued for him while in prison for robbery from 1946 to 1952. He underwent a conversion that eventually led him to joining a group called Nation of Islam, an African-American movement that combined Islam and black nationalism together. His decision to join the nation was also influenced by the decision with his own brother, who had already become a member in Detroit of this particular thing. Incarcerated with Malcolm X in the Norfolk prison in Massachusetts in 1948. Malcolm quit smoking and gambling and refused to eat pork, in keeping with the nation's dietary restrictions. That was his first, exposure towards the so-called Islam when he joined Nation of Islam. While he was in the prison from 1946 to 1952. He spent long hours reading the books in the prison library, even memorizing the entire dictionary. He also sharpened his forensic skills by participating in debates and many things like that. Following the nation's tradition, he replaced his surname from Little with an X, a custom amongst the Nation of Islam's followers who consider their family names and originations to be lost. So he chose the name Malcolm X just so that their family names and lineages were taken away. So because of it being a tradition of the people of Nation of Islam, that they took away the last name, which was Little, and they put an X, or any other people would put an X, showing the people, you know what, there is no last name. There is no family to us which has been stripped and taken away from us. Going further with that, Malcolm X and Nation of Islam. And of course, after his release from the prison, Malcolm X helped to lead Nation of Islam during the period of its greatest growth and influence. He met Elijah Muhammad in Chicago in 1952 and then began organizing things all across New York, Philadelphia, Boston, and some of the South cities. He founded the first ever Nation of Islam's newspaper called Muhammad Speaks, which he printed in the basement of his own home. He initiated the practices of requiring male members to sell, certain things, and of course, articulated and grew in large numbers, to an extent that it is known that from his joining Malcolm X, joining Elijah Muhammad, the Nation of Islam, grew from 500 to 30,000, or even 500,000 people membership in few years of his work. He himself as an individual was an articulate public speaker, charismatic personality, and of course an individual who was a great organizer. Malcolm X expressed many of the things that he felt and he went through. And of course began to develop such differences with the leader of Nation of Islam, Elijah Muhammad, and of course he left the Nation of Islam in 1963. In 1963, and I'm coming to the end of his so-called biography, and I'm going to go to his letter very, very quickly. In 1963, there was deep tensions between Malcolm X and Elijah Muhammad over the political decisions that the Nation of Islam actually was making. Malcolm X urged that the nation became more active in widespread civil rights protest instead of just being a critic on a sideline. And then, of course, they consider him to be violating some of the moral codes, and of course, they took him out. Malcolm X left Nation of Islam in March 1964. And right after he left in March 1964, that was the time that he actually went and he performed Hajj. During his pilgrimage towards Mecca, that same year he experienced a so-called second conversion, a second change towards the true Islam, that he actually realized and embraced the Sunni Islam itself, adopting the Muslim name, and from there he was known as Al-Hajj Malik Al-Shahbaz, renouncing anything that he had done with the beliefs of the nation. He claimed all the things, he made sure that whatever he had said and done in previous years, he changed his life. So now I'm going to go back to the most important point that I really, really want to share with you, and I want for all of us to be fully engaged in what I'm about to read to you. This is a letter written by Al-Hajj Malik Shahbaz, which is Malcolm X, in April, which exact date is April 20th, 1964. So a man who is raised in such bigotry, racism, in a time that he has gone through so much oppression, he has lost his father at a very young age, he has gone through refusal of all of his life. He went to school, he was rejected and told that you cannot achieve anything good in life. He became a rebellious student, he went through difficult times on streets. From his incarceration in a jail, he became a Muslim, I guess a Muslim just by name, that he went through the entire aspect of Nation of Islam for many, many years. And then from there, the change of mind came, and in 1964, he goes and he performs Hajj. In his journey, on April 20th, 1964, this man writes, and I read to you, he says, "Never have I witnessed such sincere hospitality and the overwhelming spirit of true brotherhood as practiced by the people of all colors and races here in the ancient holy land, the home of Ibrahim, the home of Muhammad, and the home of all the other prophets of the Holy Scripts." He's writing this from Makkah, and he's saying that I've never seen anything which showed more hospitality, which showed more overwhelming spirit than this place that I have been inside, which is the house of Ibrahim alayhi salam, the house of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the place for all the prophets. For the past week, he writes, when he's in Hajj, he's saying, for the past week, I have been utterly speechless. A man who's so articulate in speaking. He's known to change the minds of not thousands, but hundreds of thousands of people. He's saying, for a week, I'm speechless and spellbound by the graciousness I have seen displayed all around me by the people of all colors. He had never seen this. He had never seen people of color together. He grew up in so-called the most civilized world, but he has never seen people together with different colors. I have been blessed to visit the holy city of Makkah. I have made my 7 circuits around the Kaaba, led by a young mutawwaf named Muhammad. I drank water from the well of Zamzam. I ran 7 times back and forth between the hills of Mount Safa and Al-Marwa. I prayed in the ancient city of Mina. I have prayed on Mount Arafah. There were tens of thousands of pilgrims from all over the world. They were of all colors, from blue-eyed blondes to black-skinned Africans, but we were all participating in the same rituals. Meaning, there was no difference rituals for those who are lighter or darker, displaying a spirit of unity and brotherhood that my experiences in America had led me to believe never could exist between the white and non-white. He said, I have lost hopes. I never thought that a white and a non-white could ever do what I'm seeing in Makkah in 1 week. My entire perspective of my life has changed. And then he further says, and he writes, America needs to understand Islam. America needs to understand Islam. This is what he's writing in 1964. Because this is the one religion that erases from its society the race problem. And I hope this word can go far beyond just this room. That, again, what Malcolm X mentioned, Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz mentioned, and I'll repeat this word. America needs to understand Islam. Because this is the one religion that erases from its society the race problem. He further writes, throughout my travel in the Muslim world, I have met, talked to, and even eaten with people who in America would have considered white, but the white attitude was removed from their minds by the religion of Islam. Meaning they never thought that I was a different color, and this is not me. It was Islam that united everyone together. I have never before seen sincere and true brotherhood practiced by all colors together, irrespective of their colors. He further writes, you may be shocked by these words coming from me, but on this pilgrimage, what I have seen and experienced has forced me to rearrange much of my thoughts, patterns previously held. Meaning what I had previously thought in my mind, that we can never like white, we can never be together, my entire perspective have changed. And to toss aside some of my previous conclusion, this was not too difficult for me. Despite my firm convictions, I have always been a man who tries to face facts and to accept the reality of life as new experiences and new knowledge unfolds it. I have always kept an open mind, which is necessary to the flexibility that must go hand in hand with every form of intelligent research for truth. During the past 11 days, here in the Muslim world, I have eaten from the same plate, drunk from the same glass, and slept in the same bed or the same rug while praying to the same God with fellow Muslims whose eyes were the bluest of the blue, whose hair were the blondest of the blonde, and whose skin were the whitest of white, and in the same word, in the action and in the deeds of the white Muslims. I felt the same sincerity that I felt amongst the black African Muslims of Nigeria, Sudan, and Ghana. He further writes, we were truly all the same brothers because their belief is in one God. He removed the white from their minds, the white from their behavior, and the white from their attitude. I could see from this that perhaps if white Americans could accept the oneness of God, then perhaps too they could accept in the reality of the oneness of man and seize the measures and hinder and harm others in the terms of their differences in colors. With racism plaguing America like an incurable cancer, the so-called Christian's white American heart should be more receptive to a proven solution to such a destructive problem. Perhaps it could be in time to save America from imminent disaster, the same destruction brought upon Germany by the racism that eventually destroyed the Germans themselves. He further writes, each hour here in the holy city enables me to have greater spiritual insight into what is happening in America between black and white. The American Negro never came to be blamed for his racial animosities. He's only reacting to 400 years of conscious racism of American white. But as racism leads America up to the suicide path. I do believe from the experience that I have had with them that the white of the younger generation in the college and university will see the handwriting on the wall of many of them will turn to a spiritual path of truth. The only way left to America to ward off the disaster that racism inevitably must lead to. Never have I been so highly honored. Never have I been made to feel more humble and unworthy. Who would believe the blessings that have been heaped upon an African Negro? A few nights ago, a man who would be called an African, who would be called an American, a white man, a United Nations diplomat, an ambassador, a companion of kings, gave me his hotel suite, his bed, by this man, His Excellency Prince Faisal, who rules the Holy Land, was made aware of my presence here in Jeddah. The very next morning, Prince Faisal's son in person informed me that by the will and the decree of his esteemed father, I will be able to be a state guest. The Deputy Chief of Protocol himself took me before the Hajj court. His Holiness Sheikh Muhammad Harpoon himself okayed my visit to Makkah. His Holiness gave me 2 books on Islam with his personal seal and autograph, and he told me that he prayed that I will be a successful preacher of Islam in America. A car, a driver, a guide have been placed at my disposal, making it possible for me to travel about this holy land almost at will. The government provided air-conditioned quarters and servants in each city that I visit. Never would I have even thought of dreaming that I would ever be recipient of such honor. Honors that in America would be bestowed upon a king, not a Negro. All praise is due to Allah, the Lord of all the worlds. Sincerely, Al-Hajj Malik Al-Shahbaz, Malcolm X. Brothers and sisters, this letter is worth $1 million. This word, the word that he has written, is worth $1 million for what he has expressed to all of us and for our generations to come. And brothers and sisters, Islam is the religion which unifies people from all backgrounds, all differences, all races and all colors, and all financial backgrounds to be together and to be one. To be together and be to one. One day I was sitting down and one brother said, and subhanAllah, such a beautiful example he gave, he says, you know what, Muslims are so disorganized. Muslims are so disorganized. They're going this way, they're going this way. So one of the brothers who was sitting there gave a very beautiful example. He says, you know what? Let me turn on something really beautiful. So he turned on live Makkah for him. So when he saw live Makkah, he saw hundreds and thousands of people gathered just to pray. So he told this individual and said, the people who have gathered in this gathering are in hundreds and thousands. He said, that's amazing. He says, in few minutes, all of these men and women will be facing one direction and facing the Kaaba, and they will all have to stand shoulder to shoulder and face one direction. How long do you estimate these couple of 100,000 people to stand in a straight line, shoulder to shoulder, facing one direction? The guy said, I think it's gonna take a couple of hours to gather 1 million people to face one direction, shoulder to shoulders. It's not easy, right? Just to have a small gathering and to gather people together, it's hard. So he said, let me add something to this. The people who have gathered here, meaning the Kaaba, they don't all speak the same language. They come from diverse backgrounds. They don't all speak Arabic. And that's one of the biggest misconceptions. I usually go and speak upon Islam 101, and I say, you know what? That the Islam itself, yes, Arabic is the language of the Quran itself, but this is not the language of all the Muslims. You'll find Muslims speaking all sorts of language across the world. So he said, you know what? People gathered here in millions don't speak the same language. They have gathered from far distances. They don't speak the same language. He says that must add more time to it. He says, let me add one more thing to it. That some of them, individuals, are not even learned. Meaning they don't even know how to follow directions properly. Meaning these individuals are not well educated in a sense that you can say, you know what, they're literate to learn something. He says that's going to add more time. And subhanAllah, what happened, brother and sisters? In a few minutes, the mu'adhin got up and he gave the adhan. And then the mu'adhin gave the iqamah. And as soon as he said the words, no, قَدْ قَامَتِ الصَّلَاةِ before the word قَدْ قَامَتِ الصَّلَاةِ, meaning the salah is about to stand, the entire safuf of hundreds and thousands, even millions of people in Hajj, they're all straight. They're all straight. So the brother gave him an answer and said something so beautiful. He says, Muslims are disorganized when they are not following the commands of Islam. Otherwise, as a Muslim, if we follow our religion and our path, wallahi, there could be no nation, no individual, no people who are more organized than the one who believes in the deity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can see that by practical example. Just one iqamah can gather millions of people together, standing in a straight line, shoulder to shoulder, facing one direction. Why can our lives be straight just like that? It's because, brothers and sisters, we left the true Islam. And this is what the letter of Malcolm X is teaching us. Is that when we are in the environment, and when we are showing the true picture of Islam itself, and I know we have many sessions to come, inshallah, tonight and tomorrow, where we'll talk about the practical life of Sahaba, the Prophet of Allah ﷺ, giving his companions the greatest of the examples of leaving the bias and the bigotry and the racism. It united the ummah. It gathered an ummah. Rasulullah ﷺ left behind Sahaba. You know that Sahaba only had two groups. And wallahi, if there was no hijrah, then the Sahaba wouldn't even have two groups. And these two groups were so close that they had such bonds even closer than blood brothers. The only two groups that Rasulullah ﷺ left behind was the Muhajirin and Ansar. Those who left Makkah and came to Medina, and those who gave Nusra in Medina to those who had no homes and no families. If there was no hijrah, if there was no migration, Allah's qasam, the ummah, the Sahaba would have just been one name. Sahaba, the companions. There were no rich, there were no poor, there were no white, there were no darks. There was no differences like that. They were just the Sahaba of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They would just be the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that is the basis of Islam. And that is the foundations of what changed the life of this man known as Malcolm X. A man who was so involved in the entire racial races in America, wallahi, a week of his life changed everything. I was reading in the seerah of the life of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum ajma'in that there were so many amongst the prisoners in Medina who had gotten caught for many things. Their lives changed just because of the companionship of Rasulullah and Sahaba. I'm doing a seerah series in New York where I'm covering the entire seerah of the Prophet in 150 sessions. So I'm up to about 36, 37 sessions. So the last session that I was talking about was the foundation of Badr. I'm going to quickly share with you something from there. So prior to the encounter of Badr itself, which is known as the famous fight between the Muslims and the Quraysh, when the Muslims, before the Badr actually took place, Rasulullah ﷺ had deputed few Sahaba. And there were 6 in number. 8 in number, but then there were 6 which were left. Rasulullah ﷺ had told them to go to a place known as Nakhla, which is close towards Taif and Makkah. From Medina, very far away. When the Sahaba reached there, long story short, they saw a caravan which was filled and laden with so many treasures, and it was owned by the Quraysh. They said, should we take this? Should we not take this? Finally, they ended up taking all this treasure. They came back, and they took back 2 prisoners with them from Quraysh. When they reached Mecca, the Meccans said, you can keep our treasures, but you have to let go of our prisoners. Rasul said, I will. Definitely I will. So when they were let go of, one of them decided that I want to accept Islam. And when he was asked, why are you accepting Islam? You were caught as a captive. He said, I have never seen a group of individuals who love each other on the bond of faith than you individuals. Zayd radiallahu anhu, a child who was taken as a slave in the markets of Makkah, when he was taken away from his parents, and when he ended up coming to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and when his father Haris came to grab his son and said, my son, I'm going to take you back. I'm going to make you the king and the leader of my area. He said, I prefer the slavery of Muhammad above the kingdoms that you will provide for me. Because what he found was unity, love, and affection, not based upon what anyone wore. It was not based upon what you had. Their love was for what was inside of their hearts. They didn't love or like each other because he or she was wearing something beautiful. It wasn't because they lived in a better house or a greater mansion. Their salam wasn't more sincere to someone because they knew they might be able to help them. Their salam was equal because for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In one of the next sessions, inshallah, we'll cover this ayat of the Quran, which I recited in the beginning as the foundations of our talk, that indeed the most noble in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala amongst you is the one who achieves the most taqwa, the most awareness and consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So brothers and sisters, the letter that we hear from Malcolm X is a reminder not only for ourselves, but for our generations to come. If you want the whole world to know the true picture of Islam, then we as Muslims need to change. We might not, in this room that we are sitting in, we might not have the differences of black and white, but we do have differences within our own selves, of our own languages, our ethical backgrounds, for what we eat and what others don't eat, or even to an extent, what families and what origins we come from. Wallahi, these are destructive to our humanity. I come from a place where people are from different provinces within a country itself. And I know many of you do come, and I have friends from all different places. And I see the people sitting in these rooms, and I know this, that you also know this, that within your own countries and our cultures and our baggages, there are people who come from different provinces and areas, and even to an extent we can't get together. I remember one of our ustads in Pakistan, Muhtar Jamil Sahib, in his madrasa, in his institute, if two kids had some issues and arguments within each other, he would release both of them from the madrasa and institute. He says, if your hearts cannot be together, how will you bring the ummah together? If your hearts are not together, how will you bring the ummah together? Brothers and sisters, we have divided our own selves. If we want, as the words of Al-Hajj al-Shabazz, his words, that America needs to understand that Islam is the solution for the problem of racism. What did he say? America needs to understand that Islam is the solution to the problem of racism. If me as a Muslim, if I am living a life of a racist, it doesn't mean that as me, person of a brown complexion, is racist against white and black. No, racism within our own selves. And brothers and sisters, I'm going to be really, really clear about this. We walk inside a masjid, and if a person doesn't speak the same language, or doesn't dress the way that I do, or speak the way that I do, or doesn't speak my dialect, I wouldn't say salam to them. That's racism, brothers and sisters. We as an ummah need to grow out of this. We are ummah. We are not groups. We are not small groups of individuals. We are ummah. And unless we don't get ourselves together, we will never be able to change the mindsets of people. And this word is gold. And I cannot say this enough, that America needs to understand that the problem of racism can only be saved through Islam. Only through Islam. And this is a man who has done so much work. He has traveled the world. He has done such great work in the aspects of racism. He's saying this. He's no ordinary individual. His statement is that if true Islam exists, you will see that racism will leave the lives of individuals. Brothers and sisters, the letter that I read in front of you is a reminder for all of us to change and bring forth a reflection for myself. Many a times we attend and we come in gatherings and lectures, and we think that, you know what, this is for someone else. I know someone in masjid who's like that. I know some of you are thinking, I'm thinking like that too. I know someone like that. It's not for someone else, it's for me. Please, it's not for someone else. Don't listen to the bayans and words that you're thinking about someone else. Oh, I hope she was here. I hope he was here. I hope they would have changed listening to this. They're always like that. No, it's for me. It's not for anyone else. It's for me. I need to change as an individual. And as individuals, when we change, our communities change. When our communities change, then the entire ummah changes. And the perspective and the minds of humanity will change related to Islam on the way that I change my life, brothers and sisters. So my humble request, this is just an introduction that I try to bring to you, is that any sort of racism that may be in my own life, and I am the judge for my own self, and I don't want you to judge anyone else. Don't hold anyone else accountable. Allah knows them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows, يَعْلَمُ خَائِنَةَ الْأَعْيُنِ وَمَا تُخْفِي الصُّدُورُ. Whatever is the mischief of the eyes and beneath the hearts, it is known to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But for own selves, within my own selves, what are the racist feelings of inequality, injustices that I have developed in my own hearts? Sometimes I may not even be aware of it, but my actions, my words may show that. And what defines that? That for me, everyone is the same. And it is not the color of the skins. It is not the wealth. It is not what you drive. It is not what you wear. It's your character and your belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala which makes you exalted in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is something that I need to begin to change. So brothers and sisters, my conclusion to the talk that is given from the letters that I share with you, from the life of this man, Malcolm X, Al-Hajj Malik al-Shaybaz, is a reminder for us that if you want people to understand true Islam, and wallahi, people are thirsty. People are thirsty. On Thanksgiving weekend, there was an interfaith program, which first time ever in Nassau County, a Muslim imam was to give a Thanksgiving lecture, a sermon, to hundreds of people. Allah blessed me to give that talk with the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. After I was done, an old lady came to me. She says, I'm hearing impaired. I can't listen to things properly. But she said, when you were reading that Quran, I can hear you perfectly. She says, when you were reading that Quran, I can hear you perfectly. What were you reading? So I said, that was the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And she said, when you translated that, I heard that perfectly as well. Meaning that was just the beginning. People are thirsty. People really want to know what the true Islam itself is. Let not us be the hindrance for others of recognizing the beauty of Islam. Let us not become the hindrance for people to know the true beauty of Islam. For many of us, we may not know ourselves, but we need to realize that if I hold any grudges, any racial equality in my own life, I need to let go of it. I need to stop looking at people by the languages that they speak, by the origins of the places that they have come. I love culture. Culture is beautiful. Culture teaches us such beautiful. I don't want to be an advocate to throw away culture. This is not my perspective. Culture is beautiful. It gives you beautiful foods and languages. It just gives you sometimes even beautiful morals and ethics. I see certain kids from certain nations, I'm not going to give certain exact names, but the way that they treat their adults is with such humility and such humbleness that I wish that every child can treat their adults like that, even though they're not very religious, but their culture has taught them this. Culture can teach us beautiful ethics and morals. They're a part of it, but let not our cultural baggages take us away from the true reality of Islam. Because for the nation that we live in, for the times that we are passing, we need to let the humanity know the true Islam, the true beauty of Islam. And if people are living within us or with us and have spent years with us and have never asked us for Islam, then I think there is something wrong with it. I share this with you. One of my good friends, Mufti Farhan, mentions this. And I said this previously here as well, but a reminder, and I'll remind this tonight again. And I love sharing this. If any of you go to a gym and work out, if any of you go to a gym and you work out, after a few days, mashallah, you guys are all, big guys, and you're pumping up like 200, pounds of bench presses and doing all this great stuff. A few weeks pass, a month pass, 2 months pass, you've been going to a gym, and then after a few weeks, you're all buffed and you're all big, and someone actually has to ask you, like usually if you go to a gym, people will ask you, brother, are you going to the gym these days? If you have to go around and say, you know what, guys, you know what, I've been going to the gym these days. You know what, I've been going to the gym these days. That means you haven't fulfilled the haqq. You haven't fulfilled the right of being in the gym. If you verbally have to tell others that you have been in the gym, that means you didn't do your job properly. You know what I'm saying, right? If you go to the gym and you have to go around and tell people, brag that I've been going to the gym, you didn't go to the gym properly, guys. Because your body is supposed to tell others that you've been going to the gym. Forgive me for saying this, and this will be my last statement for this. If we have to tell others that I'm a Muslim, then I'm not doing the right job. If I have to tell others that I'm a Muslim, brothers and sisters, I've not done a good job. My character, my morals, my ethics, my appearance, my inside and my outside, my foresight, has to let the people know that this person is a Muslim. That is what Islam is. I cannot be going around and saying, you know what, do you guys know I'm a Muslim? No. My life, my actions, my morals, my ethics, my character has to define my Islam. And I again say this, the letter of Malcolm X. America must understand that the solution to the problem of racism is in Islam. And Islam is with us today. We change our lives and show people the true Islam, and the lives of others will change. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to do whatever good has been shared. My time was until 2:30, so I think it's about 2:30 right now, inshallah. We have a lot more to cover, inshallah, tonight as well, tomorrow as well. We humbly request you to join us, inshallah. We have a lineup of great scholars, mashallah, here. I'm blessed to be in the company of these great individuals. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make our gathering noble as possible. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us amal which is sincere. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us amal which is done with ikhlas and sincerity. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us amal which is mutaqabbal, accepted in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept this amal till the last breath of our life upon Iman and Islam, and allow us to live our lives as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can be pleased with us. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.